Hello, this is Riffing with Ryan. I'm Ryan Erickson. Welcome to whenever and whoever and however you are in the moment, in this now, that is now. With me today is Gendel. I met Gene, I've known of Gene for a while, and his less training and his consulting work. And who do I meet? I meet on LinkedIn everywhere. I met with him on LinkedIn. And we got into a conversation recently about the topic of education and how education is happening in the world related to Agile software development and related topics. So without further ado, I will bring Gene to the stage. Hello, Gene.
Hello, Ryan. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm excited and eager to see where this goes today. I've said a little bit about who you are, what your name is, kind of what you do. What would you like to tell the viewers about you before we get into the meat of the conversation?
Um, I'm really not good at giving a 30-second elevator pitch about who I am and what I do. I mean, I'm really not good at self-promoting. But if I were to say this very informally in a very humble way, I'm just someone who makes living and earns his living by helping organizations and not so much large organizations but rather small people within large organizations uh, to um, to succeed, to improve, to get better. And my spectrum of work is really very inclusive. It takes into account organizational structure, organizational dynamics, culture, norms, and policies. Of course, I look at stuff like budget and HR, and the way I deliver the way I share my knowledge and my experiences is through structured training, coaching, and consulting. It's a hybrid. It's a mix of different stances that I pick and choose at different times. I'm a one-man company, one-person company. Don't have any procedural or administrative overhead, so it's almost like as lean as it gets, and my clients have to pay. They pay for me and my services, not for the heavy overhead. That's why I always recommend for client companies to look into individual or small companies, experts in the field, as opposed to relying on heavy, cumbersome, um, you know, pioneers in this business hundreds of years ago, but no longer huge whales companies, consulting companies, because there's a huge procedural overhead that comes with that, and oftentimes value is questionable. So that's my small response to you.
Who you are and what you do in the world, which is wonderful and it is unique to you. What again? The topic that brought us together is something I'd invite you to consider, and maybe go on a little bit of a riff about that. Was education and how this domain of agile software development, adaptive product development, however you want to call what this is, the domain that you're in now. Um, what Why do you care about this issue of education, and how did that come to be as a topic that
Sure,
interested you?
sure. So to be frank, I graduated from the university in the United States back in the middle '90s, um, and I actually don't recall anything in my line of study. Maybe because it wasn't my primary focus, it wasn't my major. But been around, I guess around the university to know that no one ever utilized the terminology and the language we use today in my line of work. So it makes me feel that back in the days when I was in college, what I did today for a living was not even in works. It was not even explicitly discussed, taught. Students that never learned it. I don't believe anyone walked into the workforce, into the field of work with the knowledge of what personally I do for a living. Now, I also have a suspicion that today, you know, fast forwarding a couple of decades, I don't believe today this is being addressed at colleges and universities either. I think the situation is almost the same. I think stuff that we do for a living, I do for a living, is still not taught at its expected value and quality. And therefore, this is a concern to me because these people, these young people, enter the workforce, enter the marketplace, they join companies, and you know, I support many of those companies, so I see this firsthand, and I don't feel that they have been prepped to enter the work area, the work dynamic, the way we would like them to work. What's ironic about this also is that organizations struggle internally about becoming more adaptive, becoming more nimble, more light-footed, more agile. I know the word gets kicked around a lot these days, but it's sort of expected that people that have been around for decades and used to work in a very legacy, very traditional fashion, it's tough for them. It's tough for them to change their norms and ways of working, and a lot of this is also dependent on how much skins they have in the old game. And we always preach, hey, the new generation, the millennials, the people that were born in the and educated after us, they will come in and change the world. But there was an expression: when you're in Rome, you act like Romans, and they end up within a large organization, and organizational antibodies just attack them. And I don't believe they bring enough of inherent knowledge with them to overcome those antibodies. And usually antibodies in biology and pathology are viewed as good things because they defend our bodies from infection and from viruses and bacteria. But in this case, when we talk about organizational antibodies, we talk about ways of protecting legacy, old-fashioned ways of working and preventing new ways of working and innovation. So I don't think and again, I'm happy to be wrong, to know that there will be some fundamental shifts in the way people get educated, especially with respect to organizational structure, product centricity, customer focus, reporting structures, hierarchies. I would like to see all of that being improved in the next, hopefully, couple of years. So the young generation that comes and works for organizations overwhelms these organizations with innovation and positive changes. So I'm going to pause now.
So there's so much there, is that what you're seeing and also what I've seen in the marketplace, having worked with and around folks who are, I guess we call them late millennial, Generation Z folks. I'm a Gen Xer. I was born in 1971, so I'm at that kind of between the millennials and the baby boomers. So I kind of see this both worlds. I think we may be men of the same vintage, possibly. And I think what's very interesting is that how would we expect the young kids who've gone through business school coming in to change the world? How would they even know necessarily? How would they be prepared to do agile software development or helping organizations dissolve hierarchy or structures and make new things if they've not even heard of those concepts? And that if a young kid comes into like 18, like 21, 22 years old, comes into an organization, I mean, they're learning from the organism that is immune to change. That is the stable system. So how do we help these kids become more viral that they can overcome the antibodies?
I got something. So I have one piece of information that I would like to. Well, it's almost the fact that I would like to state, and maybe arguably this is just my view, but those that are going to be watching this and listening to this, they're welcome to rebuttal it or disagree. Historically, colleges and universities had what they called adjunct professors and faculty that came from the industry, and because of traditional historical ties and relationships, they could, on an ongoing basis, constantly bring back to colleges and universities um, the gist and dynamics of the corporate world. So, in other words, someone who is the very traditional project or program manager also on the side um, teaches a course at a university, and it has been done, for decades. Or someone who used to be, a corporate worker, who used to be a portfolio, a program, a project manager, decided to change their career, his or her career, and now become a professor. Not even a part-time, like a full-time professor. So inevitably, they would bring with them this inherent knowledge of the corporate world that they know. Now, this relation, they are the old timers, and and the volume and the relationships that they have built over decades and decades they are so strong. It's even hard to compete with them if you come from a completely different school of thought. Why am I saying this? In my line of work, when we work with organizations, trying to make them more adaptive, more agile, more nimble, um, looking at things very differently, I would say, distinctly differently from the way those projects and program and project and program and portfolio managers have been. We are slightly different. We're different in our mindset. We're different in our beliefs, and we're different in the messaging we send. However, um, they are clever enough, and they're clever and smart in their own ways. Of course, they already jumped in a bandwagon of thoughts and ideas that we have been promoting. So what they have been doing, and pretty successfully. They they try they turned around very quickly and took these ideas about agile product management, and Scrum and Kanban and large scale Scrum, and they repackaged them, those ideas in their own offerings. And now, and while doing that, I have a feeling that's take this as my view, my opinion. They have watered down. They have trivialized some very important concepts to make them fit the more traditional, more legacy um, ways of messaging and teaching. So, in other words, um, we can talk about the same thing like this, Android phone, and I will talk about it delivering maybe more authentic, more original uh, idea and about its design, about its purpose. Uh, but I don't really have a way to teach this to the academia, to colleges and universities. But someone who has been there for a while, they quickly jumped in a bandwagon and said, okay, so Android phones are pretty popular these days. Let me build it into my curriculum. Let me build it into my learning objectives. But of course, while doing that, maybe it's done with a good intention, but because they are fast forwarding and fast tracking themselves into this, they watered it down on the way. So now the messaging that goes into the minds and heads of students is not what it was meant to be. So I am yet to find, and I'm hoping, and I actually know of a few people like myself from my own line of work, from my own camp, that have been more successful than others to penetrate the traditional legacy firewall of academia. I am not there yet. Have not been successful. Even as an alumni of my own university, I tried many times and I wasn't able to. But I know a few very nice people that come from very traditional like project management background. They jump in a bandwagon of learning about agile product development and turn it into agile project management, just because that thing would sell quicker. Was it intended? No. Does it actually serve the purpose? In my view, no. But it sells. And nowadays, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, and so it sells that the program manager, project manager type from corporate America, they get a job as an adjunct professor at whatever university, local community college, and they'll bring that in. They get the gig, and they maybe there's some pressure or some view that, oh, I need to bring whatever Agile is and whatever I think and believe about Agile into my coursework, into the curriculum. And then they end up teaching it in a just ridiculously inadequate way, or that it's taught in a way that doesn't match with what is needed in the marketplace. So they're kind of doing kids a disservice in their education by educating them with false assumptions. Is that kind of where what you're
Well,
seeing?
you said it more bluntly and more eloquently, and now I'm going to think for a second and say you are right. You actually framed more directly what I try to say more humbly and softly. But in essence, that's what essentially what it is. By leveraging their existing ties and relationships, by leveraging the existing conduit that they have with those organizations, they are they actually are in a way disservicing. So not only are they essentially maybe disservicing colleges and universities because those programs are essentially not preparing students for real life, for real corporate life. They essentially also disservicing organizations that will be later procuring and recruiting these people. I'm not sure what's the best word to describe this, but I guess, like I said, they're clever enough in their own ways. But those historical, traditional ties, relationships, including business, because this is business after all, right? Someone works as a professor, they get paid, right? They're just too strong. Again, I have heard and I have known of some exceptions. And I also I'm gonna shamelessly plug this information in a couple of weeks. We are expecting uh, a good case, a good instance. We'll have a presentation, and I know I'm hosting it. Someone who is actually doing a much better job, supposedly, than what we have just described, and hopefully they will share with us their experience. And I'll maybe at the end of this conversation, I'll quickly mention this. But the vast majority of people that I've heard of and have known, they just don't send the same exact message. In fact, I tried multiple times myself to penetrate this veil, this iron curtain, this brick wall, and the number of steps and approvals and check boxes that I had to go through in order to get myself visible, make myself visible was just way too immense. For a moment, I even thought, what's more difficult, to get myself through the door of a university or college to help them out, or to get to get a corporate, I'm sorry, to get a consulting gig with a government. It was probably as tough, you know, just too much legacy, way too much legacy. Yeah.
So okay, so this is so not only do corporate organizations have the antibodies to systemic change within how a corporate entity would do work. Again, we're talking about agile ways of working or more humane ways of working, however you want to put the way systemic change to enable businesses to deliver better value faster, that kind of stuff. That's what the consulting practice that you and I and many others are in. So we face these antibodies and try to invade them, I guess, this virus that will get rid of that organism. And you found, like what you're saying, that is not only in large organizations that are corporate, but also in academia. so that there's that it's this vicious cycle that feeds itself.
It's almost like two huge chevrons, the corporate world and the traditional legacy academia, that are kind of feeding off of each other. And those traditional business and personal ties have prevailed over years, over decades. So it's like one hand washes another. And yes, in order to be, as we call it, to be in the money or to be relevant, they do talk about stuff that we have been doing for decades, but they do this, I would say, very superficially, oftentimes in a misleading way. So I guess they serve each other, because these people, the corporate world might be expecting a watered down version of authentic messaging that we, I and maybe you and others are to send. But and this less than authentic messaging is coming from the academia in the form of college graduates entering the workforce. So one hand washes another. So it's like blind leading the blind, or blind leading. Yeah.
And who loses in this process?
Who loses? Well, so I guess it's a more of a philosophical questions, right? Question like if both parties are equally satisfied in the corporate in the attorney's language, then there's nothing there is not much we can do. It's like they're equally happy. So like it's a married couple. If they come to a shrink and the shrink tries to tell them, no, 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 you guys are having an issue. We need to fix it. But both of them are saying, no, 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 we actually are not having an issue. We're happy with each other. Then there isn't much a psychologist, a shrink can do, right? Until the moment maybe in life when this very inherent systemic problem that they have been both perpetuating and protecting together becomes a serious issue, and then it becomes a point of friction and contention. How come we were not advised by the third independent neutral party that we have an issue? No, you were. You just ignored it. So look, I'm going to say something else. There was an expression: if it ain't broken, you don't have to fix it. So what we're trying to address now, for some people, it ain't broken. It's not broken. I think, due to AI, artificial intelligence, and the way the industry and the technology is moving, eventually this problem will weed itself out, and it would be in a less benign way. There could be some like revolutionary shifts. Now we are not trying to do this as the bloody revolution. We're trying to do this as a healthy, peaceful evolution, right? But hey, if we wait for too long, eventually it would be a moment of hey, we need to change or else.
Well, evolution takes a long time, Gene. Evolution takes whatever, how millions, hundreds, tens of thousands of years, and that's yeah. That can we wait that long? And so the question becomes,
Well, maybe you're right. Yeah, we're trying to fast forward this evolution. Maybe it's not the right word. We're trying to do what's called an orange revolution in history. An orange revolution means without bloodshed. We're not causing any damage or any. Yeah, I actually this is a European thing. Yeah. So, but anyway, yeah, we're trying not to wait until the moment when it's like a doctor says, "Hey, you got to lose weight or else." That would be just a radical, critical change you have to make, or we're going to have to put you, under anesthesia and operate, as opposed to listening to your physical therapist 10 years ago, who said, "Hey, you got to change." But
and that's one
yeah, go ahead.
opinion that also hear that, well, large organizations they're a lost cause. That's not even worth an intervention in a large organization, because there's too much, again, like you're saying, there's too many antibodies, too much complacency in this stable system that is there. So I don't know. Do you feel that it's even possible to inspire, to be a force for that kind of systemic change in
I,
what you see now? Do you believe it's
I
possible?
yeah, I think that some organizations, like I forget the name of the movie. I think it was Too Big to Fail, right? Some companies are just so big and so rich, and they make so much money, they can afford almost any any waste or any crap that we can think of. Um, I am not sure. I'm not sure if all companies can, um, if they can. What's the train of thought? 1 second. They can afford this, but some large organizations are very good at just absorbing the waste and and continuing doing what they're doing because the front office makes a lot of money and back office gets to waste it, gets to spend it, sometimes useful, sometimes wasted. So I am a true believer that eventually um, some of those companies, those huge conglomerates, so those huge companies will have to change because the industry is rolling in that direction.
What came to mind when you were talking was that the companies that can afford large scale change don't want it, and the companies that want large scale change can't afford it. I mean, maybe that's part of it.
Yeah. So what I was about to say was that large companies, they can afford absorbing a lot of waste. It's almost like, think of a very heavy set boxer who's got so much belly fat that if you throw a body shot, it will just not penetrate deep enough. It will get absorbed by the fat. So these large organizations are so cumbersome, are so heavy that any almost like any event, any adverse market event, unless it's a very cataclysmic event, they can absorb, which means they can they can withstand lots of waste, lots of organizational bureaucracy, and some of these less than um, effective initiatives that we see around us. They can deal with that. It's almost like you and I have a great idea. It requires some radical changes to organizational design and the way teams operate and people operate, and that would essentially improve things, increase maybe efficiency, productivity, decrease cycle time, and do some other great things to an organization. But nobody wants to listen to this. They really don't need this. They're so rich they can actually continue living and existing um, with all of this dysfunction and bureaucracy still being built in. They can't afford. Smaller organizations naturally are not as um, resilient, and they cannot really afford as much waste and bureaucracy. So I have a feeling, and it's my experience that smaller, more nimble organizations, but by design, are more interested in making organizational, radical or organizational changes, or meaningful, I should say. Not shouldn't say radical, meaningful organizational changes, because their bottom line can go you know, much lower, much quicker than that of a large company. So but again, there actually are exceptions. I've seen some organizations, smallish to medium size, that somehow inherited all of the organizational complexity you can imagine by getting them from large organizations. I wonder why. Well, I have my theories why, because they have probably relied on advisory and consultation of ex employees of large organizations, and those wouldn't just even know better. So anyway,
Yeah, provide these kind of tales of horror from it's like, do not go this way. This way is not going to get you what you want. Go,
yeah,
stop,
yeah.
stop. Yeah.
Well, um, yeah, well, I'll let you lead the way. What else would you like to bounce around? What ideas?
What I like to at least have one part of the program that we do is called a dangerous conversation. So what that would mean is that if what kind of conversation that that if people had it would create that level of change in the world, and that there's something dangerous about a conversation that, oh, I can't ask this question in public or make this point in public because I'm going to be shamed, right? I'll be shamed.
Well, yeah, especially if we have a cancel culture in any way, shape, or form, we can get canceled out for asking a very legit question or for bringing a very legit idea. So yeah,
Yeah. So in that spirit, what do you think is the most dangerous question that's not being asked that needs to be asked in this space of whatever we call this space?
well, I don't know if so dangerous. So I will say maybe I will call them a provocative. What would be the most provocative and exposing question or set of questions that would make um, a person or people less comfortable? So what has worked time and time again is forcing people to think how they would act, operate, and how would they make decisions if it was their own business. So take any highly paid senior manager of any large investment bank or pharmaceutical company or healthcare or a product company. They still, well, what do they have? How do they live? How do they live off of it? They have a salary, they have a bonus, and they go home. It's not their money. It's not their fund. It's not their budget. So they get to make those decisions and make those choices that are probably less than optimal. That could, probably could be avoided, should be avoided. Was it their own business? So you wouldn't do this to your own company, would you? You wouldn't hire this XYZ large consultancy that charges you $10,000 a day per deck being spoken by a junior consultant who just got out of college, would you? Oh, no, no, no. I want someone who has very little overhead, procedural overhead, someone who is very experienced and has like maybe many years of field experience. And I don't want to be doing like a deck driven organizational changes. I want real life experience. So if you're asking for this so much better option, if it was your own company, if it was your own organization, why are you settling for this less than optimal, I would say, very grotesque choice while being an employee, a highly paid employee of another company? So you have to think of as a capitalist, as an entrepreneur, as your business, as a business owner of your own small business, in order to um, really try to make the best decisions you can, not the most comfortable ones. So those I consider this as a dangerous question because when you ask this in public, when you ask this in person, you may feel you will probably make people feel somewhat uncomfortable. Now, areas where I typically like to look into also, and it also becomes uncomfortable, things that are very legacy, very traditional for many companies, and by the way, they're taught no differently today um, at the majority of universities and colleges. And I did have my, some of the inquiries I made, some of the light personal research I've done. Individual performance appraisals and bonuses. Very legacy, very traditional, very old fashioned, as it was back in the days during the Industrial Revolution. Um, it's called the Taylorian management style, right? When or Taylorian management. Frederick Taylor and the gentleman from France was, I think, with Frederick Taylor and um, yeah, I actually forget his first name. He was the coal mining engineer. Very, very, very legacy to pay people based on their hyper productivity and performance without really investing in their learning. And everyone is an individual performer, and everyone gets paid based on the minimalistic skills that they have to bring to the table and the efficiency and productivity of their own work. And of course, they get bonus for that. That's really, really, and also there's um, um, there's a bunch of research that went into this, and I can tell you, um, majority of companies are still operating this way. When you challenge this, it makes lots of people feel uncomfortable because it puts out in the open some of the most dysfunctional elements of organizational dynamics, and HR gets involved. So HR causes it to a large extent, and then HR gets involved and usually squashes that idea. So HR norms and policies and budgeting and finance, the way budgets are done traditionally, it's really not supportive of adaptive ways of working. And one of the teachings we actually deliver is to move away from projects, programs, and portfolios towards products. It's not an easy pill to swallow for many organizations. And to my knowledge, it's not the way Agile is being taught to colleges and universities. Guess what? One of the main disciplines is Agile project management.
I know we don't have a lot of time. Otherwise, maybe we'll do this again. Maybe part two of this is that absolutely you're hitting on things that are also close to my heart about individual performance management is really a thing of the past, and we that the world and people would flourish in a more group oriented collaborative way without these individual competition type. Yeah.
I fully agree. I agree, and this is actually a part of my coaching, training, and consulting effort. Always to look into these and hopefully abolish if possible.
All right. Well, I'm with you, Gene, and hopefully there will be others out there that our conversation will inspire to be on this train to help be a virus within those organizational uh, organisms with the antibodies that fight us, so we can work together better forever.
Before we wrap up, I know we should. A shameless plug, and I did mention I would like to say this more explicitly. Hopefully, we'll be, since we're recording this, maybe your listeners will pick this up as well. On September 20th, I just checked the date, we are hosting um, uh, a PhD and a professor from the university. Her name is Rosie Hawk, accompanied by one of my old friends and colleagues, Tom Meller, a very experienced and authentic teacher and educator in the field. So actually, this is a very interesting combination. And they will share, especially Professor Hawk will share with us some of the experiments and some of the approaches they are uh, making at their own facility, at their own uh, you know um, university, and that would be a great place to come. And we are hosting it with large scale Scrum New York City and global event on September 20th. So hopefully people can somehow pick up the link, and I'll share it with you as well. It's a public event, free event. Yeah.
Well, I will put that in the show notes. Make sure if you give that to me in the link, as I know I'm a member of the Meetup group, so we will have that in there, and we'll share this through the next several days leading up to next Friday in this date and time where we are now. To go there at the and your Meetup group is fantastic. I know, and I'll get on the screen here too for a moment. Um, that you always host very interesting speakers and topics and invitations to your training. I would imagine you've had Craig Larman and maybe presenting one or more times at your meetup. I would bet.
I'm trying to get him. He's not a big fan of doing things virtually, but I'm trying to recruit him to also to come. It would be a great treat for everyone, of course.
Right. Well, I parting will be such sweet sorrow here, Gene. I know you got to head out, and until next time, thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. It's been a pleasure.
And thanks to everyone who's watching, and we'll see you next time.